5 after. Good evening. I'd like to call the November 27th meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission to order, please. And with that call to order, I am going to ask for public comments for items that are not currently on the agenda. I don't have any slips.
Oh, well, I don't think any of them are not on the agenda. Here,
Yeah, there
more,
is.
Christina.
I will be getting some slips in a moment. Are they Freudian slips?
Well, sometimes.
Or they're pink slips?
Okay, these are all agenda items.
Okay. We actually had a Halloween skit some years ago, and we dressed up as the pink slips. All right, I have one item. Jim Nicita.
Good evening, Jim Nicita, 302 Bluff Street here in Oregon City. I come tonight with a respectful request to the Planning Commission to provide at least a very specific and narrow reconsideration of the Abernethy Place Hotel approval based primarily on the bicycle access question. And I have two grounds that I think, what I think was, I don't know if they'd rise to the level of irregularity, but at least concern. And the two specific grounds are the following. First, in ORS 227 that governs cities in these kinds of hearings, once the record closes, I as a participant can't speak to you all. I can't raise my hand and point out something that was said that was wrong on the part of staff or one of the commissioners. I have to just sit there and watch. Same for the applicant. There's a curious part of that statute, however, is that it's not ex parte contact for staff to talk to the commission. And during that discussion on the bicycle access way, I witnessed, because I was in the back room, something that was very concerning to me. That was the applicant's attorney, Mr. King, and architect, Mr. Hill, got up from their seats and started whispering in the ear of staff. Now, it seems to me that's one way to get around the ex parte contact prohibition, is to transmit your comment or your point of information to staff by whispering it in their ear, and then have staff, communicate that to the commission. And I'd like to request that staff reveal what was said in those contents and, how that was influenced what advice they were giving to the commissioners. The second grounds I feel was important was what I witnessed staff doing during that meeting, especially during the bicycle accessway discussion, was providing what I believe was advice to the commissioners to advance the applicant's position, and then withholding information or advice that might have changed your decision on that point had you been given the information. Specifically, the city attorney was giving a discussion of the bicycle accessway standard about connectivity, but refrained from informing the commission on a couple of other things, including very specific block and access spacing standards that are numeric and very specific, and have a very significant bearing on when you have to have a bicycle access way. There were other points. For example, Mr. Mahoney raised the issue of dedication and this being on private property. Well, there's a provision in that code that staff or the attorney didn't raise with you about the requirement for a dedication, just like a developer has to dedicate a street. Commissioner that's absent tonight.
Paul Lesby?
No.
Zach Henkin?
Mr. Henkin had raised a question about lighting of the access way. And I'm pretty sure that is addressed in the bicycle access way standard in the code as well. And again, staff didn't provide you with that information on any of those points, and they were very pertinent to the discussion. And again, I couldn't raise my hand and say but, and I certainly wasn't going to go and whisper in the ear of staff either, even though I saw, the applicant's counsel and architect doing that exact same thing. Based on those two grounds, I think there was some irregularity in the final decision that I think warrants a reconsideration on, at a minimum, that narrow point. Thank you.
What meeting are we talking about?
The final.
October 23rd, not the final one, but October 23rd, where the preliminary vote was taken.
Okay.
The one where we closed the record and we're going to get findings at the next meeting. Thank you.
We're going to pause here for a moment while I ask the $64,000 question.
All right.
Well, the question is, yeah, thank you, that's about what I was going to say.
I guess, let me jump in for a second. Obviously, we just heard this
Obviously,
for the
yes,
first
we all
time,
did.
so we're kind of sorting through these things. And one of the first questions we ask is there authority for the Planning Commission to reconsider a decision is a first question that we want, because, the Planning Commission did adopt findings, and it is a final decision, and so
And right.
Do we want to just move on and then get back to this?
I can-
Or do we have to answer this right this second?
I would love just to answer it, just so it's all clear. So while our city attorney's reading the,
So the request is to reconsider on the issue regarding bicycle connectivity?
and Mr. Kabizman's reading that section of our code for reconsideration. We do have a section, so he's reviewing it right now. But I can respond to what was said, because I do know what was said. And that was when there was some whispering on the opposite side of the dais. So it wasn't to me, it was to Pete, or maybe there might have been some to me as well. And then, anyway, so it was to direct, it was a comment to staff saying that there was exhibit with the pedestrian connectivity or bicycle connectivity. So after the whispering, then you saw Pete try and bring up the slide of
Which we
where
looked
those
at,
are.
right.
And so, to my knowledge, that's all there was, so.
yeah. So
But I just wanted to acknowledge that the record is closed, and we are right now in the appeal period. So the item is still open.
Yeah, and so in a request, there is a provision, OCMC 175260, any request for reconsideration must be received by the planning division within 10 days when the decision in question was rendered, and must specifically describe the alleged misunderstanding or misinterpretation. It's warranted where the city's decision indicates decision maker failed to understand or consider certain relevant facts in the record or misinterpreted the application in some material way. So we'd have to look at those questions. But one of the key things as
Could you read this code section again?
Sure, it's 1750-260.
260, okay.
And one of the immediate concerns I'd have about reconsideration is a 120-day rule. As you know, we've got to make decisions within 120 days. And if the Planning Commission were to reconsider it and open it up for any additional evidence, there would be, required notice and all the rest. And I would want to check in with staff about where we are in the 120-day deadline before we, go too much further to.
And I don't know what the answer to that is yet, but my computer's booting up. So I could tell you later in the hearing where we are with the 120.
And just for the record, if we went over the 120, what is triggered?
It would trigger the ability of the applicant
Remedies.
to sue the city in circuit court mandamus. And in that situation, should
You
the,
just spoke Latin
I
or
know.
English.
basically, it's a
What it is.
lawsuit at circuit court where they come into the circuit court and say, court, they have exceeded the deadlines, tell them to approve us. And in that situation, things flip. Here, before the Planning Commission and the city, the applicant has a burden to show that it is entitled to the decision. It's got the burden to prove it. In circuit court, it changes, and the city has to show why the applicant shouldn't be granted the decision, granted the approval. In addition, there are financial penalties should the court order the decision made, and I've forgotten the specifics of it, but there could be significant liability on the city as well. And so that's basically what happens if we were to exceed the 120-day deadline.
Okay, it's just been a while since anybody's actually enunciated, they just 120, and so what? But there is a
No,
so
it's not,
what.
it's not a so what.
Well, I
It's-
understand,
yeah.
but it's been probably 10 years since anybody's ever asked that question, I think.
I'm trying to remember if we've had them at, sorry, I'm trying to turn it off.
Sorry, that time's up.
Yeah.
Or your fries are done, one of the two.
I can't remember a
I like the
time that
latter.
we have.
I'll go with the fries are done.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted it on,
Yeah. The other thing, the issues that were raised as I'm looking at it, well, they may be, again, just heard it for the first time 5-10 minutes ago, maybe procedural irregularities that could be brought up to the city commission. Don't know for certain, really have to dig into that a little bit more to make sure. And so, certainly to the extent there, well, I just don't know, we'd have to dig into it a little bit more.
Okay, and I guess the question I'd have is, since the city commission has it for action,
Well, we don't.
We're in the
don't yet.
appeal period, so if we receive an appeal, then they will.
that's right, it was a different thing that they've got, okay. No, I'm
Yeah.
better. So, okay.
Different thing.
So we still theoretically have control of it because it hasn't passed on to any other authority at this point.
We did a notice of decision with the planning commission's decision, and that's the last thing that's been done.
Right, so we are still theoretically the authority of.
Well, hasn't the record been closed on that? And if it has, do we have control over it? We've
Yeah,
made our
because the 10
decision.
days is after the notice of decision.
Say again?
The 10-day
I think there's a
recall.
14-day appeal period, but he's talking about the 10-day
Yeah.
reconsideration.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Right. And so do you know when the notice of decision was made?
It's pulling up right now.
Okay. Sorry,
That's
No,
okay.
That's fine.
That's all right. So are you looking up the decision?
November 15th.
so November 15th.
I thought it was November 15th.
It is
And-
November 15th.
And if that's the case, we're outside the 10 days that would allow the planning commission to reconsider.
Count holidays?
Is it calendar days or
Or
business
business days.
days?
That's always, when it's 10, it's usually business days. And 14 is usually calendar days.
But we, in good faith, made a decision based on findings that came before us.
Right, but his argument is that we were given biased findings.
Biased findings?
Yes.
No, biased information.
Biased information that made us not make a finding based on all the facts in front of us.
So under our code, 1.04070 says, except when otherwise provided, time within an act is required to be done shall be computed by excluding the first day and including the last day unless the last day is Sunday or a holiday, in which case it also shall be excluded. So it doesn't specifically address holidays. Except, so basically what it says is, how you exclude the day, the first day, and include the last day, unless the last day is Sunday or a holiday, in which case it also be excluded and
I thought there
essentially
was
extend
something
another
in our
day.
code that
So,
talked about
So,
calendar days
Saturday.
Well-
and business days, but
so if we
Again.
exclude the first day, that makes it the 16th,
right.
which makes it the 26th, which is a Sunday, which means
Is it-
today is the 10th day.
If you don't include the first day, if you include the 16th, so 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, which is a Saturday.
right, it doesn't say Saturday's not a Sunday,
So if you include the last day, but not the first day.
Right.
so it's Saturday.
We don't have to deny an application. All we have to do is just go through the process that we've been going through the last several months on this. We just drag it out to the point where nobody knows what's going on.
Well, I think we do know what's going on.
I don't.
Okay, well, we'll get you up to speed.
Well, I appreciate it. And don't be
Well,
biased about doing it.
I'm not going to be biased.
I would say based on the count, that it's beyond our ability to recall it at this point based on our code. Is that, I missed it by that much.
I think so, and like I said, this is the first time
Sure.
I think this is
I
the
mean,
first reconsideration request we've had at the planning commission.
Yes, we've had them at staff level, that's it,
Okay.
that I can think of.
All right, well, if it's calendar days, then I think we don't have authority. If it's business days, then we do, clearly.
We can take a look throughout the hearing and see what we can
Yeah.
find
Okay.
right now.
Do we need a motion to decide what we're going to do?
I would think so.
It probably wouldn't hurt to do it.
That would be my recommendation.
Without you making a decision or telling us?
Wait, what, hold on, hang on, we are still talking to our attorney. Hang on.
Let me just say,
Please,
make my request.
please,
Mr. Robinson.
hang on.
I'm
Hang
trying to
on.
make a procedural objection.
Hang on just a
We're noted.
moment.
Please don't vote until you.
We are not doing anything because I can't get you to stop talking.
I'm stopped.
Okay, thank you. So what I was suggesting is that, yes, we need to be thinking about a motion of some sort. I do have another slip here. I'm assuming it's involving the same thing? Nod?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I,
I guess here's my question to you. I don't, is this starting to turn into some kind of a debate? Is it appear to you that that's what's going to happen here?
It appears to me we've got a request before the Planning Commission. To the extent, somebody wants to be heard on it, on a procedural matter, probably
Yes.
makes sense to allow them before decisions
I'm not
made.
suggesting at all that.
Yeah.
I don't want this to turn into a debate on something that we've already adjudicated and made a decision on, and then it's the, we've got
Or can't make another.
decision
I mean,
on,
if
and it's going to be,
time, then.
it's going to be the he said, she said thing.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that.
Denise, I'm concerned about the fact that it is turning into a debate after the fact, after we've made our decision. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yes, well, we do have an item on our agenda for items that are not currently on the agenda, so I think that leaves us with very broad discretion. We have yet to refuse anyone to come up and speak, and I wouldn't want to start now at this late date in our tenure as a planning commission from time immemorial when planning commissions have existed here in Oregon City. So I think it's only fair that we have a request, let's hear it. I will ask our esteemed staff over to my right to try to keep a lid on this, because I'm
Right.
feeling a little uneasy. I don't know about how the guys are feeling, but it sounds like we're all feeling a little uncomfortable.
But it is a legal issue, not a planning issue. We decided the planning issue. Now, the legal issue has to be decided by our attorney with an opinion.
Or something, yeah. So there's still,
And I want to hear from Mike.
yes, so
Yeah,
we're
please.
going to have Michael come up. Come on up, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Griff, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Robinson. I'm an attorney for the applicant that Mr. Zecita referred to. Thank you for taking my off-agenda testimony. So I appreciate Mr. Weissman knowing so quickly that there was a provision for reconsideration. I wasn't aware of that. One of the nice things about our age is I could just pull it up and look at it. So I don't think the Planning Commission has authority to act on this at all. What your code says is, reconsider, it tells you what, oh, here it is. Any request for reconsideration, and I'm now reading out of 175260, any request for reconsideration must be received by the Planning Division within 10 days when the decision in question was rendered, and must specifically describe the alleged misunderstanding or misinterpretation referring to an earlier provision in the code. And then it says, if the request is granted, the Community Development Director shall notify all parties that the decision will be reconsidered. So I think what that says is, if someone does want reconsideration, assuming they're within the time frame and they meet the requirements of the code, they make the request to your planning division, who decides reconsideration and then gives parties notice. And I think that's a fairly written provision so that what happened tonight doesn't happen, which is someone appears ex parte and talks to a body that's already rendered the decision. And that concerns me. It should concern you as well. So my only point was, not only do I don't think this body has any authority to make any decision, period, but I don't think a request is properly made under the plain language of your code to this body. I think it goes to the Community Development Director. The other thing, and I guess I can talk with Mr. Gebeisman and Ms. Turway offline about this, I want to be certain and clear that the discussion tonight is not part of the record in front of the City Commission. I don't believe that it should be, but I'm going to just have that conversation. I think it's, anyway, I wanted to read the code section so you were aware of my reading, because I think it goes to the Planning Division, not this body. Thank you for your time tonight.
You just read that though, right?
Yes. And it does say that any request should be submitted to the planning division. You know, it doesn't clearly delineate who the decision maker is about the request for reconsideration. So, you know,
Well, it's just saying making the request. It's not saying that anybody in the planning division has the ability to reconsider the request. It just says you have to do the ask.
and I think part of the difficulty with this body making that reconsideration is, I think typically decision issues and 10 days start, and we get to the point, you know, the only reason it's close to 10 days in this case is, because of, you know, in most cases, it's going to be at least 14 days between when the decision's made and when the ask is made, you know, because there was a delay in getting the decision out. So it's going to be awful tough in most circumstances for the Planning Commission to hear a request for reconsideration. So, you know.
Well, I would disagree with that, because if it's within 10 days to get to Laura and her staff, that there was an error and we think you need to bring it up, then that clock has been met. And whether it's 14, you know, the next meeting 3 or 4 days later, or because we didn't have one at Christmas and it's 28 days later, it's still within the time. It's still a timely reconsideration request.
And I understand that. I guess the other point is that once a decision's made, the request for reconsideration, there's no indication that it stops the appeals clock ticking.
Right.
And if appeal gets filed and you've got a reconsideration filed, it gets messy. So,
It's a
does,
procedural
but-
mumbo jumbo going on.
yeah, I was just thinking we need to discuss about how to handle this situation in the past. But I guess the first question we probably ought to decide is this request timely?
Right, and that to me, that's what, I mean, if the answer is no, because it's calendar days and not business, then it's moot for us. It doesn't mean an appeal can't go forward, but the rules prohibit us from doing anything because Saturday was the 10th day.
Right.
So what you need to find out is whether there's any indication whether it's calendar or business. And if it's ambiguous, then I think we need to make a decision.
The more restrictive provision of the code would apply.
Yeah.
But has the,
Where are we on the
has the appeal been made within that 10 days, whether it's Saturday or Monday?
Well, it's not an appeal, it's a request.
Oh, okay, request.
For reconsideration.
But that's got to be made to the
Planning division.
and has it been done?
No.
It's been done verbally here.
Right.
Okay, so it is moot.
We're not the planning division.
But we don't know whether it's business or calendar. If it's business, then today and tomorrow are within the 10 business days.
Oh, I see.
Because of
Okay.
the holiday.
So if he were to make that request tomorrow to them, he would have met the
business day
the
requirement.
business date.
Yeah.
So we have to make that determination.
As to whether,
He's looking in the code.
Yeah.
Usually it's business days.
Can we circle back to this at the
Yes.
end of the
Yeah.
hearing?
Where are we
Is that
on
okay?
the 120-day clock?
I have no idea. Since I don't, the planner would know, and
Right.
he's not here, and I don't know.
Well, let's just call Pete up tonight and we'll just ask him, right? He's probably
I know your mouth is full of chili tonight.
he's probably
but
at home just, chilling and kicking back. No.
I would imagine that for the 120, that includes the final city decision, and we know that your decision is appealable to the city commission. So I couldn't imagine that there would be a lot of time to come
See,
back to the planning
tonight's
commission,
the night that I-
reconsider, and then go.
See, every
So-
other night we had planning commission, I brought my entire tote bag, and I had the original staff report, which would have told us exactly where it was.
Because if you issue a new decision, then you have the new appeal period start from that
Right.
date that the new decision is, so your 120 is getting pushed on.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know, but I suspect that this would have significant 120-day implications.
Well,
Yeah, I would too, but-
I believe that was extended on a number of occasions, as I recall.
It's just, normally, generally, they're not extended past when is
Right.
necessary for the most part.
Right, they generally aren't.
But
Yeah.
Can that 120 days be extended by somebody other than the applicant?
Only the applicant controls that.
Has to be the applicant?
Yep.
So this is a yes or a no, not a verbal answer. So is this a point of order question?
Jim?
Is this a point, I'm asking you to nod your head yes or no. Is it a point of order question?
Is
Would you like him to come up and get?
No, I'm asking the question, is this a point of order question? Because you've had your
Okay,
time
that's the question, yeah.
time to get up and talk, so,
It's a procedural, so I'd say
okay.
yes. Because that's what gets us in trouble is procedure.
I don't want to be.
Procedurally, if
I'm
the
not
planning director is here this evening, does raising it verbally at a planning commission meeting at which the planning director is present constitute making the request to the planning division? Or can I take out a piece of paper and write my request and deliver my handwritten request to the planning director? Would that constitute delivering it to the planning commission, division?
Well, you would have done it by Saturday, apparently, from what they're counting.
Well, that's if we do business or whatever.
Yeah.
Did you find something?
Found no further guidance. You know, all we have is, about the deadline, I mean, the holidays.
This will be the last point, and then we're going to circle back to this because
So-
we have other things.
Why don't we get going on the other
Yes.
things? We'll continue to work at this and circle back.
Okay. Everybody take a deep cleansing breath. All right. This evening, we have 2 public hearings on our agenda. And basically, I'm just looking at seeing the audience here because what I'm trying to do is figure out if I can just read this once and it'll be okay.
Yeah, probably.
And I don't have to read it before the second public hearing, so, okay.
The thing to do is read it once before everything and then ask before the second
Yes,
if anybody
yes,
wants it reread.
Yes, that's what I was going to do. All right, so on tonight's agenda, we have, as I stated, 2 public hearings, and I will go through the fabulous quasi-judicial land use hearing script, and if you know it, just mouth along, we all probably know it by heart by now. All right, so tonight on our agenda, we have SP 17-127, CU 1703, VR 1710, VR 1712, and VR 1713. Staff report has been prepared for each of these provisions and has been made available to the public 7 days prior to the first public hearing. Staff report identifies approval criteria that apply to each of the applicant's proposals. Staff has analyzed the criteria which is contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart. I love just pointing to the chart because now it's there. For those of you who weren't here, it was gone, so I couldn't point to it. It was gone. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed anyway. I'll get them and I'll look at them, so we'll get everybody on. You should fill out your address on the card so the city can notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed towards the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in that record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of that record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits to be used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, please submit copies to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to the staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional testimony or evidence or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision in which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both, without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to. The issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. I've already stated all the files, but before we open the public hearing, does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare? Have you gentlemen visited the site? I'll start with my esteemed colleague to my left.
No, I haven't, but I'm familiar with the area.
I visited the site the day before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Tomas?
Nope.
This is the school, right?
Yes.
I am very familiar with the site because I work for Oregon City School District as a, not necessarily primary employer, but as a significant employer.
Okay,
I
and
do feel I can make a neutral decision.
this decision, yes. And I am very familiar with the site. I happened to receive a notice of land use action as a representative of an organization that owns property adjacent. I did not need to go on the site, and I have had no ex parte contacts regarding this particular application. So does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the commissioners about the disclosures? Okay, hearing none. We will, just for the record, unless otherwise established, we will have the staff report, we will have public testimony, 15 minutes for the applicant, and I'm going to take some prerogative here. Is there anybody here from a recognized neighborhood association in that area? Because we will give you some additional time. 3 minutes for individuals and 5 minutes for the applicant's rebuttal. There will be questions of staff, discussion, and possibly a motion. And we would ask that during all of these public hearings that we all just be really nice people and be considerate of everybody else who's here. And we would like to have no demonstrations such as applause, cheering, or display of signs of other sort of disruptive behavior, but it depends on who you ask. And because one person's disruptive behavior may not be another person's disruptive behavior. All right, so we will ask for I'll go ahead and open it. We'll ask for the staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair McGriff and Commissioners. My name is Kelly Reed, planner with Oregon City. So this application is for a new modular building at Gardner Middle School. They've applied for a conditional use, site plan design review, and 3 variances.
Give it a second.
The school is located at 180 Ethel Street. Overall site plan shown here, and then I have a zoomed in version later, but we're really looking at the back of the school building here. And that, an aerial photo, a new modular building is being proposed to be placed right in this location. It's about 1,800 square feet, and it contains 2 classrooms.
So do you have your little thingy? So you can,
Oh, you're not seeing this, are you?
no, we can't see it on ours.
Can I have the mouse?
So I think you were pointing to it, but it doesn't, I don't know why it's so weird it doesn't show up on ours.
Is it the other mouse?
I think I gave it the wrong one.
It's Mouse B.
There we go.
Okay, so can you see that on your screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we're
Yes.
looking right in this location. And you may remember, I think a lot of you were on the Planning Commission back in 2013 when the school district applied for a very similar conditional use and variance and site plan design review for this structure right here, which is also a modular building that contains 8 classrooms. So here's a zoomed in site plan. The proposed classroom would displace a few parking spaces. It would be surrounded by a chain link fence with some landscaping, with a covered walkway from the existing school building. And the current site is over-parked, if you will. They are well above the minimum parking, and so the displacement of these parking spaces doesn't affect them meeting the standards for that minimum parking required.
How many are being displaced?
Oh, it's in the staff report. I think it's about 8 to 10.
It's 8.
8.
But they're also handicap spaces, so they're wider. So.
Yes. And so this is the modular building that was built in 2013. And the new modular building seems to be designed similarly with similar materials and colors. Here's a photograph of the area where that would be placed on the back of the school. There are some of the ADA parking spaces there that would be displaced and replaced elsewhere. And then this site plan shows the landscaping that would be surrounding the building. Building elevations, similar materials to the other modular building that was recently built. The applicant has requested variances for some of our building design standards, which I'll talk about later. And so all the code criteria that was referenced in the staff report shown here. The site is in the single-family dwelling district R6, which is why it's a conditional use in a residential zone. And then we've had various other chapters which we've reviewed, which I'll go into. First, the conditional use criteria. Schools are a conditional use in the residential zone. This school use previously by the Planning Commission has been found to be suitable for the area. The site has ample room for this building. And the building is being placed in a less visible area of the site. You're not really able to see much of it from any public right-of-way. And so the findings really in the staff report are that the character of the surrounding area won't be significantly altered by adding this structure to the site. I'm not going to read all of this off to you, but I'm sure you're familiar with it, and the findings are all in the staff report for conditional uses. And there are a few variance requests that go along with this as well. The first one is to code within the institutional and commercial building standards section of our site plan design review code, which requires that buildings be built up to the front setback or within 5 feet of that. In the past, for the last conditional use request by the school district, they requested a similar variance because the building is set back quite far from any property line being placed behind the building. And staff recommends approval of this, again, for the same reasons as last time, that it's impractical to place the building close to those public rights-of-way, given that the only right-of-way, like a front lot line, is really a stub street, two dead-end streets that stub into the site. For the second variance, these are design standards also within the institutional and commercial building section of that code. These require variation in building massing, minimum wall articulation, and transparency on the front and sides of the building. And so the design of this structure, it's a modular unit, doesn't meet these, and staff looked to the past Planning Commission actions on this, and also again recommended approval as we did last time for the larger modular building. And really the impact of not meeting these standards is lessened by the placement of the building. It's not highly visible. And the school district, I think, can talk about the nature of the building and the future plans for the site. The last variance request is to the non-conforming chapter 1758-040. This is not a non-conforming use, but it is considered a non-conforming site because it doesn't meet a lot of our current standards for landscaping and for pedestrian circulation. And when non-conforming sites are expanded, our code requires that if a certain level of, or after a certain threshold, and it's an investment of $75,000 or more into the site, that non-conforming upgrades need to go along with that expansion. And so this does constitute a project that's greater than $75,000 worth of expansion. And And typically, at a staff level, when we process a lot of site plan design review applications, this does get triggered, and applicants are required to upgrade elements of their site. The school district has asked that we don't require this of them, and staff's recommending denial of that. There are two options in the code for nonconforming upgrades. One is to upgrade items with the cost limited to 10% of the total investment in the site, total project cost. And that project cost that's been provided to us by the school district is $300,000. And so their maximum 10% investment in nonconforming upgrades would be about $30,000. It's unknown if they did upgrade the items that are nonconforming, how far they'd get. They could be able to get there with only spending, $10,000, $20,000. We don't know enough now, but we know that they would be limited to $30,000. The second option that applicants have for upgrading nonconforming elements is to upgrade everything. So there's no cost limit, but they have 5 years to do so. In the first option, they do the upgrades along with the current construction project that's under consideration. The second option gives them 5 years, and so staff's recommendation is that the applicant choose one of those options and provide nonconforming upgrades one way or the other.
Why do they get to choose?
The code allows them to, allows applicants to choose which option normally.
What if we have what if we have some findings and some suggestions about what we think they should do?
You're the planning commission, you have more authority than staff does, when we normally give the choice. So I would think that that's something that the planning commission can consider.
We could discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
I'm reading your mind, Tom.
We don't have a lot of authority lately.
So the variance criteria generally requires that impacts are mitigated, that there are no practical alternatives, and that the variance conforms to the comprehensive plan. The applicant has provided findings, and staff agrees with their findings for the first two variances. And before that third one, we can't really see that any impacts are being mitigated, and that it doesn't really conform to the comprehensive plan. This is required of all applicants that meet that threshold, and so that's behind our recommendation for denial. And I just want to show a couple of the nonconforming elements. Pedestrian circulation is one of them. I think there are a lot of entrances to the site that are not connected by an actual ADA pathway or even any sort of pavement at all. And this is just one of the pedestrian access ways that comes from a cul-de-sac, I believe, near the school, allowing for students to take a little shortcut. Then there are various other areas of the site that don't have pedestrian circulation, 5-foot wide paved access ways. And then the other element really is just perimeter parking lot landscaping, which requires trees and shrubs, and for the most part, this site only has ground cover for their for their perimeter parking lot landscaping. And one of their arguments was that the topography in some places actually, I'll use the mouse actually so you guys can see it. The topography makes trees and shrubs difficult in some of the areas. And staff doesn't dispute that, but still feels that nonconforming upgrades of some form are warranted.
Are those, in that last picture, the green vegetation, is that grass that's weeds?
It's grass
It
that's
appears
not out of
that.
control.
And so it looked like some morning glory, but, you know.
And so staff's recommendation is approval with conditions, with the exception of the third variance request for non-conforming upgrades.
And also, just for one clarification, we did want to clarify, we looked at our non-conforming code, and it does look like that the applicant has the authority to choose within the list, meaning we don't have the authority to limit what they choose within that list for non-conforming upgrades.
But we could propose a third or a fourth,
Well,
or a modification of one or the other.
the code specifically states the applicant may choose one of the two following options for making the required improvements. Option
It says-
one,
It says may.
right, it's the applicant's choice.
We don't have much authority
Well,
lately.
but if it said the applicant shall choose, then it will be only those. But may means there could be alternatives.
That's right. I'm following the Ed Sullivan rule of the may and the shall. I
And I-
remember that very distinctly.
I can tell you the Court of Appeals has stepped away from that prescriptive use of may and shall and say they've got to be read in context. But anyway, why don't we hear from the applicant? And
I have questions.
Yes, we
Or
have
have
some questions
questions
of
to
staff.
staff,
We're
sorry.
not calling for the public testimony just yet.
And Chair, may I add one
Oh,
item?
absolutely.
Thanks. The first variance request for the 5-foot setback, variance from the 5-foot setback, the applicant requested that you grant that variance and apply it to future buildings on the site. And staff is recommending that you grant it now, but not for future buildings, and that those be handled on a case-by-case basis.
I think the law is very clear that we can't bind ourselves to future actions. Am I correct, Bill?
You're getting a workout tonight.
you know, under some provisions you can, such as if there's a master plan, could you,
We might under that. This is not a master
Yeah.
plan. This is a conditional use permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's my,
That's what I thought. Bob, questions?
No, not this time.
Vern?
Nope.
Tom?
Nope.
Daniel?
yes. First, on your 8 conditions of approval. Condition of approval 1, I think you're missing some words.
Uh-oh.
Because you have the covered pedestrian walkway to demonstrate the width of the walking is at least 5 feet.
Width of
It's
the,
those darn computers.
Yeah.
width of the walkway, probably.
Okay, or walking path or whatever, but
We've been hacked.
yeah, it's like, oh, you can only walk if you can take 5-foot steps. And 6, you have that they can utilize paint or a physical between the westernmost portion of the development.
Physical,
Barrier, I
Barrier.
believe, is missing.
thanks.
Yeah, and then I'm curious as to what the value of 3 is. I mean, this is a modular building that's less than the height of the building it's being set against. What landscaping are you gonna be putting around it, and why do you need to shroud mechanical stuff when it's gonna be on a roof?
I think this is referring to the ground mounted equipment that is proposed to be shielded with landscaping and the,
Or screened?
yes.
Possibly, okay.
And that there's a certain amount of screening, and it wasn't clear from the applicant's submittal that there was really enough plants that would actually screen that to standard.
No,
And then I guess, can you go back to the picture of the close-up of the thing that shows like the, there,
well, it doesn't show where the mechanical equipment is.
right, I just, when you were clicking through it, it looked like the circles were trees, and I'm
They
like,
are trees. Those are trees.
So I thought they were trees.
The large circles are trees and the little ones are shrubs.
The large circles are trees.
so we're requiring them to cut into their pavement to put trees up that the modular building could come down within 4 or 5 years, and then they would have to refill the holes so we can shield them against, if you go back 2 more pictures, that people won't have to look at the, nope. There. I mean, people already look at an absolutely blank facade. Why are we requiring them to put trees up in front of the building? I can see we're requiring them to put trees up under the 2 options, like along the fence line of the property. But to stick trees up right against the building when the building itself will provide the variance in depth and articulation for the view of the people that would be even looking at it from 120 yards away. I'm not sure what the value of trees are. I mean, I can see putting,
That's a big question. What's the value of trees? You mean the values of trees in those locations?
The applicant proposed that landscaping. It's not written as a condition.
Okay.
That landscaping is proposed, and it appears that the landscaping will serve multiple purposes, one of which would be to screen the mechanical equipment.
Well, I'm just looking at it
Where's it gonna go?
as a taxpayer of the school district and saying, boy, $30,000 could really be used someplace else than putting a tree in that's going to be cut down in 4 years when they move the building and rebuild.
You can't cut it down.
Yeah, you can. You can cut down any tree if you want to. You just have to mitigate.
Please don't say that on the record. I'm already having a conniption fit about it.
So
Come to my neighborhood.
okay, so, what was the other one? That's it then for now. Thanks.
Well, I didn't have the same question about condition number 1, but I guess my question is, what is sufficient documentation regarding the covered pedestrian walkway to demonstrate the width of the walking, as the correction is at least 5 feet wide? What's sufficient demonstration?
Just showing it on the plans and labeling it, essentially, on the construction plans.
Right now in their submittal, it was just a line with hatch marks.
Well, maybe it
saying
should just
walkway.
say that, because that, to me, that's a lot of area open for interpretation.
Yeah, shall submit plans regarding the covered pedestrian.
I think that would be,
Yeah. I mean, they're going to have to do it
clearly,
anyway, so.
clearly delineated plans, I think would be very specific and allow for no, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Oh, and where are they moving the ADA walkway? Do we have that?
Where the ADA parking spaces, where are they getting moved to?
I think over
Nope, you got to
here,
use your mouse.
over here, I believe.
And then where's the entrances to, is that a doorway right there, the
Yeah.
door thingies? Okay.
The question I have is for them, so that's fine. Thank you.
Could you go back to the aerial again? No, yeah, okay, that's the one thing, because we were talking about not going to be visible, but it's going to be visible from somebody to somebody, but we don't have the bottom of that. So it's going to go up there and could possibly be visible.
Yeah, like I said, it's like
Yeah.
100 yards, the
Okay.
nearest.
Okay, there's not a lot of somebodies there. Okay, we're good.
Yeah,
Yeah, there
Yeah,
will be.
then go back to,
I know those somebodies won't care because that's the graveyard.
I know, they're very quiet. So I guess the other question I had was involving the doorway where they're going to be able to go in. I think you had that on, it showed on the side of the build where you're showing where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's one of
Oh,
those.
one more. One more. There we go.
That's no, that doesn't look like the same door.
It is.
I thought it looked like, I thought it was over on the side.
It'll be what they were showing with the swing is the chain link fence enclosure.
Well, but it showed a door opening.
There.
That's almost invisible to the public, isn't it?
Yeah. See, there's a chain link fence enclosure.
Yes, I see that.
And that's,
So I was just trying to figure out what door they were going to be able to go into.
the one by the gym.
Yeah, where it said girls, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah, okay, that's good.
Right.
Okay, are we using the timer tonight?
No, I don't know how to.
15 minutes.
Where is it?
And I will be counting.
This one? Both.
That's right. We get to go all night.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have a
This is the
presentation?
musical interlude of the hearing.
What's your- Okay,
See,
do
we're
you
way
want
more
this?
fun than those other people. We at least have
We're
a sense of humor.
at least different than the other.
I can agree to different. Said I can agree to different.
Yes, we will agree to different. We won't mince words here for semantics. All right, come on up.
But that's part of learning.
Oh, yeah. Start the
And
timer.
do we have any slips for this?
You got them already. You-
No, I only have
No,
the two.
what are all those right there?
Those aren't slips, that's my stuff.
No, they're, they give you like four slips.
No, she didn't.
Start the timer now.
Oh, sorry, they're in there. Start the timer now, yes, okay.
I slipped
Oh, I just tossed them. Okay,
Good
go
evening.
right ahead, sir.
Good evening, Chairman McGriff
Oh,
and
please
Planning
don't call me
Commission
Chair
members.
McGriff.
Chairperson, what do you like?
That's much better.
Okay. Having stuck my foot in my mouth already, I'll move along.
Oh, come on. We're good.
Rick Givens, planning consultant for the applicant. I think staff has done an admirable job on going through the conditional use findings. I'm not going to go into any of that. This is a project that's needed right now for the school. They need a couple more classrooms, and this is a temporary fix to provide for that. As you probably know, the school district plans to replace the entire Gardner Middle School facility at some point.
Yeah, you did tell us that.
The application states that. At any rate, the proposal would, to move forward with that, obviously there would be a bond levy that would need to be passed, but the plan is to replace the entire campus. And this is a temporary fix to allow for the needs of the existing enrollment at the school. I think the primary issue that is up for discussion today is the variances. First of all, I would just note that when you adopted the chapter 17.55, which requires a 5-foot setbacks for for institutional buildings, you essentially made every school in the district, within the city limits anyway, a non-conforming use, which means that anytime they need to do anything, very seldom are you going to be able to comply with a 5-foot setback requirement. And so it's a situation where there's no choice but to file for a variance. I think it's badly written code. I'm just going to make that comment as a planning consultant, 40 years of experience. I think there should be some exceptions granted for